So I was going to start with this. I was going to have you do a mathematical equation and tell me if that square is going to get bigger or smaller. But now I thought of... So the title of this talk, If That's Scholarship, We Are All Doomed, it's sort of a funny story. At least it was funny to me because I was doing a talk like this at the Chronicle of Higher Education, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later on, and it was to like presidents of colleges, provosts, you know, really powerful but relatively conservative individuals. And I did this whole conversation where I talked about the emergence of social media and digital media and how it's leading to this whole new field of digital scholarship. And then we wrapped up, and I'm looking around the room and people are staring at me like they tend to. And one guy at the front table with all the reserved signs raises his hand. I'm like, okay, here we go, we're off and running. He takes the microphone and leans into it and says this: "If that is scholarship, we are all doomed." And he literally dropped the microphone and walked out of the room. It was, quite frankly, one of the most amazing comments I've ever gotten. So I was stunned. I was sort of knocked back, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And all of a sudden, hands started going up all around the room. And I sat back for 20 minutes and watched a room of 350 people have this conversation for me. I didn't have to answer another single question. So I always use that as the title. So before I move on to the subtitle, I want to say this. It is an absolute honor and thrill to be here, not just in this position, but to be permitted to come and speak to my own community. I spent 15 years at Penn State, and that was something that we never really did, and I'm just so humbled by that. So thank you, and thank you for that. That was out of control. That was unbelievable. So there's a subtitle to this: How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Conversation. And if you know anything about that, you'll get it. But so a couple caveats to start. When IT people walk into rooms and they give these kinds of talks, the first thing that people think is that this guy's going to come in here and throw technology at me. He's going to force me to use technologies that may or may not impact or benefit what I am or who I am or what my students are. So the first thing I want to start with is this idea of, please, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Teaching practice, pedagogy, thoughtfulness always wins the day, right? What we're going to talk about today is really exploring the potential of embedded pedagogies, and I mean that, within the new technologies that we're looking at. They all have these affordances that we have to think about and unpack and apply to our work, but first of all, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The second thing I like to do is I like to start with my frequently asked questions, the questions that I usually get at the end of the talk. I put up front so I can answer them now, so if we do have time for Q&A at the end, we can talk about probably a little bit more substantive things. So don't you care about privacy? The answer to that is yes. Doesn't that violate FERPA? Probably not, but check with General Counsel. Aren't you concerned with copyright? Of course I am. And finally, isn't all this technology killing students' attention spans? No. Okay? Let's move on. So to frame this up a little bit about me. So do you guys know what this is? Pong, right? Yeah, it's a new massively multiplayer online game that you play with one other person. No, this is Pong, right? And so, like a lot of you I noticed in the room, I was born in the era of Pong. And so I remember when I was very, very young, my parents came home. They were college professors, and they were always sort of geeking out a little bit too. And they came home with this big box. And this box plugged into the TV. And it transformed the TV into this singular thing. And you sat with a paddle by yourself and played against a computer and lost every single time, right? But it was this crazy moment in, say, 1975, 1976, where the TV went from this thing that you sat back, remember that, the brain scan of doing nothing, to just all this activity in your mind, right? It's really insane. Quite frankly, one of the most early moments of mind-blowing activity I can remember. And then this is me. I just want you to look at my hair. Just soak it in. Okay, so this is the interesting story about this. So now this is 1984. This is my 12th birthday. And my parents brought this thing home, this Macintosh. My dad and mom were getting them on their desks as college professors. They had no idea what to do with them. They said, bring one home, let's see what the boy does. They plopped it down. And first of all, I thought I was the coolest. Well, I was, obviously, but But now I want you to think about this. Now this is 1984, so Pong in 75, right? We don't have a major shift in what we're thinking about or doing as consumers or even beginning to think about the application to education until this time happens. The personal computer sort of happens. But remember what this plugged into? The wall. That was it, right? It didn't go anywhere. You didn't get online. You didn't do anything like that. You just sat here and did this. But I will say this, that this was really, upon reflection, this was really the first moment that I thought, my God, technology is social. It's really social. And what that meant to me was my friends would come over to the house and we would sit down and we would write app programs together. We'd draw pictures together. It changed my social status. I was the first kid in my school that came in and handed in my paper without the fringes that you rip off the side of your notebook, right? I could use different fonts. Remember when that was awesome? I could put clip art in. But again, think about this. Now we're talking about 75, 84, right? And all this time goes by in between before we ultimately get to this place called the internet, right? Huge, huge gaps in paradigm shifting technologies that impact all of us. That's the first point I want you to think about. For the past 15 years, I've been at Penn State, another wonderful institution just like this, a Research One university, huge. My job was very much like my good friend Chuck here. I oversaw the teaching and learning with technology plant there, and we had these challenges. We had about 100,000 students stretched across 24 campuses with 23,000 World Campus students who never stepped foot on our campus. Think about that, right? We had 24,000 full-time, part-time faculty and staff. The whole time I was there, I taught courses in both the College of Information Sciences and Technology, and over the last 5 years, an awesome grad course that I absolutely love teaching called Disruptive Technologies for Teaching and Learning that I think I'm teaching for CDAC come next spring. And much of the stories from today will come from my experiences in that context, okay? So then I arrived at Stony Brook in August, right? People now use the A word to describe me. I am an administrator. God love all of you, right? And I want to introduce you to the people that I work for first and foremost. And Chuck's not on this slide, but it's these two. Hold on a second. Okay. I already answered the question. I care about privacy. It's very, right? So these are mine. Actually, these are real children. They're analog. They are not digital. They're real analog people. They do normal analog things, like make pizza and all sorts of stuff. They interact with technology in amazing ways, fascinating ways. They do things that blow my mind, and if I had 4 hours, I would bore you of stories of my children's use of technology, but I don't. Let me start with this one. This is Madeline at about 3. She's using a thing called Webkins. Do you know what Webkins are? Right, the little stuffed animals that come to life in an online social network for children. You keep them alive by feeding them, by earning Kins Cash. Kins Cash is established by doing things like playing games, but more importantly, you make more cash by solving math problems, doing spelling. She started doing this, her learning accelerated. But look, she's using the same computer, basically, that I did in 1984, right? Now this is my little man, Max. He was born with the iPhone. I mean, not literally, wasn't born. He was born at the same time as this. Now these kids are about 4.5 years apart, so they are the difference between our freshmen and our seniors, right? He grew up never really using a mouse. He doesn't, still to this day, want to sit down on a computer. He does everything via touch. He thumb types, he pinches, he drags, he emails, he does everything in that context. My daughter does now too, but it took her a lot longer to gain an appreciation for that sort of notion, right? So now think again, okay? 75 to 84 to 95, massive jumps in time to paradigm shift. Now we're talking about the difference between our freshmen and seniors having radically different experiences and expectations with technology and how they use them. And that's what we're up against. Now here she is, a little more recent picture of her. She's 12 now. I just want you to notice how clean her room is. This is clearly a staged photograph, but it's really not. So here she is doing her work, and sort of the way she does her work is on her Chromebook, right? Her Chromebook, not her Windows or Mac laptop, her Chromebook. She's using Google Docs to work live with her classmates on a book report. Her teachers are looking over her shoulders virtually and giving her feedback and assessment while she's working. At the same time, she's staying connected with her friends on Facebook. Contrary to popular belief, they do still use Facebook, even though they're telling us they don't. And down here on her phone, she's using Instagram. And we'll talk a lot more about that, but that is her emergent social network. Guess what? She has no idea what Microsoft Office is. She doesn't know how to turn in papers in Blackboard or Moodle or anything else. She doesn't even think about file systems. There's no such thing as a .docx. She clicks on a paper that her teacher puts in their Google Drive, and they start writing together. Think of that. So here we are, and what mode are we all in? We think we've progressed to this edge of technology because we can use PowerPoint. And boom, boy, that hurts, doesn't it? But, and this is a big but, they can tell and create stories and conversations, and from here on out, the rest of the time I have with you, I'm going to talk about what I call new forms of conversations that the internet and the web in general are empowering. I'm going to use this because this is very personal. Okay, here's the deal. When we were talking about the potential of coming to Stony Brook, the kids didn't want to move naturally, right? And they said, we move, we get a dog. I don't like dogs. I've never liked, don't judge. I just lost half the room. We want a dog, we want a dog. No way, we're not getting a dog. And then, we're not getting a dog. It's not happening, we're not getting a dog. And then we just moved. And so we're talking about this one night. They disappear with her iPad mini. Okay, just keep in mind, with her iPad mini. They come back about an hour later and drop this iPad mini down on the bar where my wife and I are sitting down in our kitchen, and they press play.
Life, it only goes by once, so you have to make the most of it. With a golden doodle, our family would be happy, healthy, and exercised. And that's just the reason we need to get one. For us being first-time doggy parents, it would be important to exercise the dog like walking it every day.
Notice her
Also,
folding.
It would teach us responsibility and how to wake up early. Our favorite name for a girl is Daisy. Like we said before, life moves pretty fast. That's why we need the golden. It'll be great for our family. We love a new dog in our family.
So that's Sully. We picked him up 3 weeks ago. So now, that's cute, right? It's a cute example, but think about that as the alternative to the persuasive argument paper, right? This is an unbelievable opening one-liner conversation to I want a dog. And this is what's beginning to happen in and around our schools, our classrooms, and in just general. So I thought that was an interesting little thing. And then they walk back into the school, and I'm reminded of this quote. Going to school is like getting on a plane. You sit down, strap in, and turn off all your stuff. You can't turn them back on until you've landed at the other side. Right? So back in State College, PA, which is probably one of the top 2 or 3 school districts in the entire state, a fantastic school district, they still, on Fridays, have to earn computer lab time. Right? Think about that. Like we did, right? Okay, if you're good this week, you can go to the computer lab. And then you walk through the halls and you see this. This is the highest recognition of achievement in the state of Pennsylvania for schools. This word just turns me on so much. Adequate. Those same kids that went up to their room with that thing and made that adequate. Great. Intellectual contribution to the entire district. As an aside, it looks like a road sign, just so you know, and I think it's a way to funnel money from the Department of Transportation back and forth from the DOE. So who we work for, part 2, our emerging students, and I say that because of that gap, right? That 4-year lifespan of technology that's now shrinking. So every student that I prepare for, I'm almost hosed by the time I get the next one, right? Do we feel that in the room? Like this exhaustion with keeping up. And let's look at some of this stuff. Like this is what their dorm rooms and their apartments and their bedrooms look like. And so you all say, oh, they have a short attention span, right? They're texting in class, they're doing all these things, right? But look at this, and Chuck, you'll remember this. See all this equipment? People like Chuck and I used to lock this in lockers and make them come and check it out from us to do anything, to participate. Now they have $100 high-definition phones and cameras in their pockets that they shoot, edit, and post instantly to the internet. And we wonder why they have short attention span. And it's this Alan Kay quote that I really love, and it's so true, right? Technology is only technology to those born before technology. Like, Macs came out and said, yeah, that's fine, I'll do that. My mom still calls me and says the mainframe won't print. And no, that's not a joke, that's serious. She still says that. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman. But it's technology to her. So when we ask them questions about their familiarity with technology, their comfort level with technology, the most amazing thing happens is many of them still rate themselves as novices with technology, because they're thinking about the things that we think are technology. We sit in the back of the room and watch them work, right? Walk behind your students using technology and it blows your mind. They're so fast, they're bouncing here, they're doing that, but then ask them to do a pivot table, right? To them, that's technology, not the world that they live in. And as we ask them this stuff, more and more on our surveys, they start to say this to us: I want to be able to do what I can out there. And what does out there mean? It means not on our network, okay? And so at the risk of being a terrible CIO for a university, let me share some of those with you. This is the expectation, something like Facebook that connects. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you to teach with Facebook. I'm saying that there's something interesting about the dynamic that allows kids and adults alike to engage in real conversations on these platforms, very much unlike our learning management systems. That they dive into, they get exactly what they want, and they jump out, because even they are smart enough to know that they're more like this, a locked newspaper box, than they are like the open social web. They know that. We need to understand that. And it's not a knock on those systems, it's the reality of what those systems have become. The mechanical Turk of the traditional classroom. More and more they want this. This is the real-time web in Twitter. You will learn about news here before you read about it in the paper, watch it on TV, or anywhere else. And we still communicate with them in Gmail. And this is great, right? We still push this way with them. Their expectation now is this, more and more, make it all mobile, deliver it instantly, right? And we're making real progress. This is our iTunes U page, or our iTunes App Store page. But we still have so much work to be done to meet the middle of their expectations. Their expectation are environments like this. This is World of Warcraft. Have any of you seen this before? So World of Warcraft is one of the most popular online games. You and I look at it and say, what a colossal waste of time. People spend hours and hours. Ask those who play, and they'll say it's the most challenging, collaborative, problem-based learning experience that I have. I've worked with faculty members who get kids to start playing this, and halfway through the semester, they swap out foreign language packages to teach them how to communicate in other languages. We still environments like this. These are what we deliver, right? And we do wonder why they stare at us from the back of the room. So let's explore a little bit about why. Let's take a few minutes, and I'm going to adapt a little bit of work from some folks about the new complexity of the home media ecology. Okay, so I mentioned 1975. You guys remember 1975? It was great. You don't. Stop shaking your head. No, that's just mean to do that to older people, okay? I mean, seriously. But you remember this. This was what we basically had then, and I don't know about you, but I had 3 channels, and you had to turn a real antenna to get them, right? You know, so you could watch things. But things all happened in very different mediums, right? Like news you waited for. How many times was news on, right? Twice, 6 o'clock and 11. That's all that news happened, folks. There was no weather on the 8s or anything. It was just this one time. And then you stored your media on these things, right? These separate things that you kept over on a shelf and you displayed proudly. Look at the whole media ecology of today, right? It's absolutely incredible. And if we look at tomorrow, tomorrow is just a big black box, right? That probably looks like a mobile phone or something of that nature. It's just incredible. The information and the ability to process has just changed so much. And here, this is great. You'd agree that television is a relatively well-adopted, embedded technology in our homes. There are 116 million US homes with at least one TV. This is 2.5 years old. Already there are 83 million web-based mobile phone users on the planet, or in the US. Think about that for a second. That's incredible, how quickly this is tracking. So before we look at the future, let's look a little bit at the past. Another picture of Al. It's the greatest photograph of Al Gore I've ever seen, though. Is it not? He looks great in that picture. So the first time around, remember the web in like 1994, 1995, when it actually became the internet for us normal people? It was very static. It was hard to create for, if you remember. Like to make it, you had to do this. You guys remember this glorious stuff, HTML? It's not the way people write, by the way. Human beings don't write that way. And it was a one-way platform, which is a shame because we built it, right? As researchers, we built it for collaboration, to empower collaboration, to empower participation. And we lived many, many years until we started to figure out, oh, you can sell stuff. If you can sell stuff, you can have back and forth conversations. And it really took us until, I'm going to say, 98 or 99 to arrive at this place that Tim O'Reilly calls the architecture of participation. And that's the internet that we have in front of us today. We have a platform that empowers conversation, communication, and participation. So to make it easy, this is sort of Web 2.0. It's easy, available, collaborative, participatory, but at the end of the day, as Charlton Heston once said, it's just people. The web is really people. So when you sit down and you think it's all about technology, the reality of what's happening today is that it's people driving conversations with other people all across the network, all the time. And I think they're enabling new types of conversations. So what are we afraid of? Let's look at a couple of things. Right now, we're living in a world of highly disruptive innovation within higher education. Let's look at this first one. The classroom disruption. The teacher knows as little how to use it as his pupil. What technology do you think historically that is for? So that's the chalkboard. I heard that out of the corner of my ear over here. Somebody said blackboard. But you were actually talking about Blackboard, the software tool, weren't you? That was a home run. You just hit a home run. Gold star. That was great. Nobody's ever gotten that, actually. Everybody says the internet, PC, something like that. But think about this as a disruption, and this is what it means. This is not a negative thing. This is what it means. Think about it. 1839, you're teaching your class. Everything's perfectly normal. You come back in 1840, and for the first time ever, you're asked to turn your back on your students. You have no teaching practice to manage this, right? All elementary school teachers write the same way, right? Big loopy letters. They didn't learn that from the same handwriting teacher. That's a teaching practice to manage the technology that was installed in their classroom. There are examples like this throughout history. Projectors, film strips, everything that happened were all viewed as disruptive technologies or innovations within a teaching and learning context. What else did everybody always say? It's going to revolutionize education. It's going to destroy education, right? We've had that same polarized conversation about this stuff since we started talking about technology in the classroom. And I think about this, and these are some of the things that keep me up at night on this campus. How they access media. Social networks are their recommendation tools, right? They used to go to the library. The library used to have books. Remember those days when the libraries had books? And they weren't coffee shops. They were actually places you went. But now they get all of their information and news via their social networks, probably like many of you do. How they connect with media? More than 40% of resident hall students watch TV on their computer and only on their computer. Now think about what that means to us as we try to provision this kind of technology on our campuses. How they control media? Time shifting is the only way they consume. So DVR, TiVo, Netflix, whatever, right? So basically you're looking at a generation of students who are more powerful than the CEO of NBC television. And so what does that do? It alters their expectation. If I can watch whatever show I want at any time, at any moment, why can't you get back to me in a reasonable amount of time on my question about my exam? It just doesn't make any sense. What's wrong with you? Right? How they create media. Nearly all students create and share media. Literally, nearly all create and share. And we have to give them tools to do that. So here's something, and these are uninvited, and we heard our keynote this morning, which, by the way, he was unbelievable. That was fascinating, just a great talk. Uninvited changes are coming. Here's something. So the Chronicle reported this, a boom time for education startups. And what that means is investments that used to just go to Tumblr and Twitter and all these startup companies are now pouring into higher education, especially in the educational technology space. They know that this is an exploding area. One of those has led to Coursera. We talked about that a little bit this morning. Stony Brook is a participant in the MOOC landscape, right? But this is completely and utterly unexpected, that somebody like Moody's would come out and say that your bond rating as an institution may be positively affected or negatively affected if you can or cannot participate in the emergence of a disruptive innovation on your campus. That is something that I never thought I would see. So think about this. 4 university partners in April 2012, Coursera launched. It took them less than 3 semesters to get to 5 million students. And that has nothing to do with completion rates or anything like that. You just have to look at this and see that people are investing not only money, but radical amounts of attention into this. And by the way, we're one of these 100 plus university and state partners working with this company. Major disruption. And look at this. Now, we launched 5 MOOCs at Penn State at the time that I was able to still access the numbers before they revoked my access. There were about 280,000 enrollments. Now, are those Penn State students? Like, there are so many questions that you can unpack from here. But this is something that is just amazing. This is the Facebook page that went along with the art MOOC. And look at these numbers. And this is the faculty member writing this. 58,000 of you signed up. 37,000 came to class at least once. But this is the most amazing. You made 14,300 pieces of original artwork. That's unbelievable, that kind of scale and scope related to delivering instruction. This is a disruption. We've not yet figured out what to do with this. We've not yet figured out what to do this. So it is scary. Here's another example. I used to run one of these, like a symposium, teaching and learning and technology symposium. We used to have a photographer, then we ran out of money, so then we just said people have phones in their pockets, they can take pictures. And so they started people to come and take pictures, and they would use a tag. And at that one year it was TLT Sim 09. And we'd get all these pictures of really handsome people having really good conversations. Who laughed? What was that? And I would sit around and I would browse these photos, and they would come in from all corners of all the people that would come. And I was sitting around one night, it was probably about 11:30 after the symposium, and I was just basking in the glory of the day and started to go through the photos, and I started to notice something. Yeah, she wasn't at the symposium. Now here's something we didn't know. That day, the tag TLT Sim 09 became a trending topic on Twitter. Now, Twitter is very young. We couldn't do that now, but so we were encouraging people to use that tag. This individual saw that tag, applied it to all of his photographs here, and essentially inserted his discourse or dialogue into the story of our day. As you can imagine, we didn't know what to do about it. The provost was thrilled, by the way, because we were actually displaying the photos across the symposium website, and every now and then one of these would come up. Rod called and said, "Why don't you take those pictures down?" It's like, "I can't, they're not mine." Okay, lesson learned. Here's another one, identity concerns, and this is real. This is very real. It used to be, like, we met at this table when we were discussing the circle and the square and all that kind of stuff, but now it's pretty much what we know of each other. We could pass a business card like we did. But now our identity is shaped by so much, right? We construct a meta identity, and all of our students are doing that right now actively. And here's an example, and many of you have probably seen this. Has anyone not seen David? Okay, so I'll give you the quick setup. David is coming back from the dentist. He's had some surgery. He's been given, the standard array of drugs to get him through the surgery, to manage the pain and everything. He's sitting in the backseat of his father's car, and he's acting like you would expect a child to act after surgery. And his dad decides, I'm going to shoot video of this, and I want my wife to see it. So what does he do? He posts it to YouTube. Posts it to YouTube without understanding what happens when you hit the publish button on YouTube. If he understood the publish button on YouTube, he would know that the whole world can see that instantly. If he would have published to Facebook, his 13 friends on Facebook would have seen it. Didn't understand that. But let's watch just a second of it.
Yeah, I know. How did it go?
I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
I feel
Kind of felt good, didn't it?
Is this real life?
Yeah, this is real life.
Okay, now I have 2 fingers.
Good.
4 fingers.
4 fingers?
It's on the internet. You can watch it. But it's interesting. I've done this in front of lots and lots of educators, right, in rooms. And it usually starts like it does here. And if you let it play through, the audience reacts very differently. You start with laughing. It's sort of funny. But then you start to realize that there's some really serious implications at play here, right? David didn't grant permission to this. This is his first ever foundational layer of internet life, right? That now is woven deeply into the fabric of who we are. And it wasn't David that made this mistake. We're always saying these kids and their internets, right? No, the parents are the ones, because we don't understand the embedded affordances of the technologies that we're trying to use. It's why districts wholeheartedly block things like YouTube, because they don't understand the ways to use the affordances of the platform. Really important. And this is it, 10 years ago, none of this even existed, right? We're still just in the early days of understanding how social impacts learning. And I would say that learning is social, so we're in this thing. So let's explore some new conversations. Facebook is an interesting one, only because of its size and scope. 1 billion with a B. The population of North America is about 345 million. It's big, to put that into perspective, right? Pew now says about every single teen on the planet are active on Facebook, but Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr are closing in. So if there were another thought bubble here, it would be the rumors of my demise are greatly overrated, but the reality is they have accounts, but their attention is moving elsewhere. But there's a lot to learn from the engagement model within Facebook. There's a lot to learn about creating one-to-one personal relationships with people you actually know. They actually use it that way, unlike we do, where we just become friends with anybody, right? Very, very different. So let's look at the emergent social web. So you remember her, right? With all of her stuff. This is where she spends her time. Instagram, her #1 social network. This is probably the #1 social network at Stony Brook right now amongst our students. It's a very visual network. It's about taking a single picture and having conversations about it. I take a picture, somebody says, nice picture. She takes a picture, 50 of her real friends in real life have a conversation with her. A real conversation with her. And you know why that's happening? Because we don't let her out of the house. Right? We don't let the kids out of the house. We keep them locked. Like Patricia, when we were kids, we were allowed to go do things, right? We don't let children do that now. So they've replaced going down to the soda shop or wherever it is with participation over mediated networks. It's no different than the kind of engagement we had. It's just they've shifted their conversation over there. Tumblr. This one's hilarious. So Tumblr is probably the second largest used emergent network. So this is an example from Penn State. So with Tumblr, you can search on what are called hashtags, which filter content from all over the web into one place. So now this happened one night. I was sitting around looking at Tumblr and I searched Penn State and I started to see these pictures of Nicolas Cage superimposed on the faces of all these famous people. I couldn't figure out what it was, and then I realized that in the background, these were my classrooms all over campus. All over campus, people had gone and they'd organized this thing and they print thousands and thousands of pictures, I have no idea why, Nicolas Cage on top of Bill Clinton's face. The next morning we saw it in the newspaper, but here's one of our classrooms. All of our 356 classrooms were blanketed with these things. Now, it's funny, it's goofy, but so what'd they do, Chuck? They used our free sheets to do the printing of all their Nicolas Cage things, right? Yes, it's true. So those are the emerging ones, and we don't know what the heck to do with them. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take you through 4 basic themes that we looked at about 7 or 8 years ago at Penn State and did some work, some research and some publishing on this, about the trends we were seeing at that time and how they've moved into common practice. So here they are: multi-channel discourse, the emergence of the real-time and one-button web, social construction of knowledge, and shift from media consumers to producers. Most of these are my own experiences. Multi-channel discourse. My classrooms look like this, right? With lots of students using lots of technology. I don't know what they're doing. So I started to do this. I started to put second screens in my rooms. And I would project the channel of conversation that they were having. So I'd say to them, we're going to have a hashtag for class today. Get on Twitter and start having conversations with me. So as I'm lecturing or we're having conversation, this is going on next to me. So my slides are up here. Their stuff's over there, right? And they're doing really interesting things. They're asking real questions. They're helping each other out. We categorized all the tweets and we found out there are about 5 various kinds of tweets students use in class. Most of them are very positive and very helpful. It gives those a voice in a classroom that would otherwise be afraid to raise their hand. Right, so Twitter is interesting. This is 2008 we did this. So if you don't know Twitter, it lets you communicate instantly with 140 characters or less, Very different than Facebook, because Facebook, we're friends. And we have to agree to make a connection. With Twitter, I can follow interesting people in my field and keep track of what they're reading and what they're writing about and posting about. So it's a professional development network for me, so I can keep people there, right? So you see those, and then followers see your updates. And like Ben Harwood posted some great Pew stuff that I stole for this talk, right? I got it from Twitter. So the Chronicle of Higher Education found out about this, and they did this great article. It appeared in a flash. I'll let you read it. I'll summarize it. Crazy professor uses students as lab rats and encourages them to not pay attention. That was, I mean, if you read it, that's basically what it says. Now, the good thing about the Chronicle is the Chronicle does allow for comments, right? And so at this time, this was the most highly commented upon article in the Chronicle's web version ever. Got about 100 and some comments. So I'm going to explore a couple of them with you. First comment was this. What a great idea. I may have to try this in my next class. It's like, great. I didn't even write that, so it was great. I loved it. The next one. What happens when the student's answer is wrong? Now there's a distracting class where misinformation may be taking center stage. Sort of sounds like when someone raises their hand, no different. Then it got crazy. You techies would teach through your wazoos if you could wire it and get your president to fund it. Which isn't true. We've tried. Doesn't work. They won't fund it. But the magic of the Chronicle still to this day is you have to create an account with a real identity, with a real email address to leave a comment. So the very next comment, literally seconds later, I'm watching this whole thing happen, was this. Are you the professor? Are you so-and-so from this university? If so, your ratings online from Rate My Professor show that you may have already adopted that innovative practice. So a flame war has broken out on the Chronicle of Education about a guy using Twitter in his classroom, right? And I took this name out because I swear I'm terrified that in one room I would show up and that guy would raise his hand and say, that's actually me. But think of this. This is a word cloud that was constructed by the negative and the positive tweets. Look at that word, wrong. These are the comments, not the story, what people reacted. About half of the people said, this is so wrong what you're doing. Compare that to the positives, where almost everybody said, this is about a conversation that's going on. So look at this, totally polarized conversation. Half are saying it's destroying education, half is saying it's saving it. And somewhere in the middle, there's something there, truly. But this was the most gratifying and actually the final tweet, or the final comment on the whole thing. That course disrupted my notions of participation, identity, and community, and changes are for the better. The course was so intellectually stimulated that when the course ended, I experienced tremendous loss. That was one of my students. I did a great job. Then I went and I asked her. She's a professor at the University of South Florida now. And I asked her, I said, Becky, thank you so much. She's like, oh, this has nothing to do with you. You turned the class into a community. It was about us having a conversation between ourselves throughout the semester, and we became real colleagues in that class. We worked together to help solve problems with you, not against, not for, but together. This class, when I tweeted this morning that I was going to be talking about it, one of them actually responded to me and said, I hope you're going to talk about the Twitter thing we did in class. And it was just, it's amazing. And that's 2008 till today. Opening up another channel for people to participate together. Very similar to what Eric was talking about with his peer instruction model. Amazing. So that's the first one I want to mention. Real-time web and one-button web. This is a map. You remember we had an earthquake on the East Coast? Did you all feel that out here, right? So I was standing on campus and I felt it. Felt the ground shake and I was like, something weird just happened, and we jumped on CNN, BBC, couldn't find anything anywhere, jumped on Twitter, and that's the spread of the news of the earthquake happening from the core. 30 seconds to make it that far on Twitter. And that's where we found out that we had an earthquake first. So it's with the speed of these conversations that are altering the participation amongst the communities. This is really hard to see, but this is from a spring football game at Penn State, the weekend after the Virginia Tech shootings. This is typically a giant S, right? That first day of that week, 60,000 Penn State students started and joined a group on Facebook. Penn State supports Virginia Tech. By the next day, the president and everyone had recognized that the university wanted to do something about it. By the game on Saturday, they had ordered enough t-shirts and organized it so that the stadium would do this. That kind of thing does not happen without an embedded network to make that conversation move that quickly. It's fascinating how quickly this happens. It's because of the real-time web. Let's look at the old school web publishing model. If anybody's ever done this, they remember it. They make files that look like this. Then they FTP them using tools that look like that. I don't know. Then they browse it with the web browser, everything's wrong, and you start over. So naturally, we've ignored the idea of encouraging students to publish on the web for too many years because I'm teaching a political science class. I don't want to teach you web development, right? I want to teach you about political science. So now we have this notion of simplified publishing. And here's a shameless, what's that called? Pitch. Plug. For our own new platform for simplified publishing. You can get on now, u.stonybrook.edu. It works like this. You go there, you click a button, you authenticate because identity in an academic setting is so important. If you're going to ask your students to write, you need to know that it's their words, right? So they authenticate, they type, and they hit publish, and it builds beautiful output of content like this. And so this is something that's happening already in our campus. We launched this really roughly in January. Already we're approaching 1,000 sites on campus. We have 35 students that started, about 275. Amazing examples already on the u.stonybrook platform. We did this project at Penn State in 2008. And the last time I checked in 2012, there were about 50,000 blogs, 50,000 places where students were writing and reflecting. But the more interesting thing was not just the 300,000 entries, but the 240,000 comments. So they were actually commenting on each other's work. They were writing reflective things. Other people were talking to them about them. And then this is really the most impressive thing is the assets. So what they would do is they turn in their papers the way we want them to do on Blackboard, and then they'd write about the process of building the paper and attach it to a blog post to save it for themselves. And then the last thing I'll say about that, and history is already repeating itself here, is that administration, I guess me now, said we can't have blogs unless they're private because students will say awful things. So we compromised and we said, okay, that'll be default to private, but they can hit a button and make it public. Of those 50,000, 95% roughly were public. And the number one help desk request we had on that was, how do I make my private blog public? They didn't want to write because they started to discover one thing, is that they're writing for somebody. They're writing for an audience. They have that in their mind. So they're writing actually better. And we did some research on all this, and I'll talk about that in a second. We got here by this thing. This was something I did. I used to run the Governor's School for Information Technology in Pennsylvania. Awesome program. 75 of the best and brightest high school kids going from their junior year to their senior year. Bring them to campus for a 5-week residency. We might have 10 students with perfect 1,600 score SATs. Like, these were really, truly the great scholars of the state. And in about 2004 or 5 or something, we put them into teams and we had them as bloggers. And we would invite guests in. And one night we had the director of the FBI's cyber crime lab come in to talk to them. And as he's talking, they're blogging. Now keep in mind, this is about the first Napster time when kids were stealing a lot of music. They don't do that anymore, by the way. That's all over. We've solved that. But he's up there saying terrible things. He's up there telling the truth. Like, if you do this, we will find you, we will arrest you, we will find you, and they're blogging. We'll hunt you down, we'll take your future, and they're using words like Nazi. Unbeknownst to us, we have no idea. They hit the publish button, it's an evening, everybody goes home. I come in the next morning, the academic director comes running to me and says, oh my God, did you see what they did on the blogs? So we look and we have these 12 posts, because there were 12 teams of 5, all basically saying the same thing. This guy's an idiot. What the hell's wrong with the government? We're going to overthrow this sucker, right? I'm waiting for the governor himself to call. That doesn't happen. The weird thing is the FBI, they find stuff. It's their job. So this FBI director finds these. Instead of raising a fuss, he gets an account on the blog system and purposefully and thoughtfully comments on every single one of them. So now keep in mind that this is a 5-week program. This happened in the second week. They talked for 3 weeks, funneling their conversation down to where one of these posts of theirs had something in the neighborhood of 80 comments where they were just back and forth. And they started to appear like this. I get what you're saying. I understand it now. This is okay. I get it. They unanimously voted to bring him back. He did the closing session at the Governor's School. So now think about that for a second. What would have been a 1-hour closed room session that left students thinking the FBI is a bunch of crazy people turned into a 4-week dialogue where they both sort of agreed on this thing, where he started to say things like, maybe my approach was wrong. And they said, well, maybe we understand now the stealing is wrong. So taking that closed classroom experience and giving it a thoughtful opening led to a 4-week conversation. And that's when we knew that once we started to get faculty and students together on this in a proactive and productive way, that you don't go back to the closed door of publishing. It started to turn into what we called a learning life stream, where students did everything in them. Faculty used them. This was one of my colleagues from Penn State. All of his students, semester after semester after semester, write in the same space together, from his freshmen to his doctoral students. They cite each other's work. They model writing with one another. He never takes down old posts. They just build upon the past. This is another great one, another group blog where the faculty member has her students write personal histories about the time, World War II and their family. Then she uses that as secondary source material to do her own research and publishing. And then you have things like this, where you can actually get in the neighborhood of 336 comments on a blog post. Last time I taught using Blackboard, that didn't happen. Just didn't. There's something about open that encourages this. So some basic insight. We did a little bit of research on some of this stuff. We did it based on not a lot of students, but 13,000 student bloggers, and what we found out that about a third are simply entry dominant, that they just write their own original posts. That's all they do. 14% are entry and comment dominant, so they write and comment a lot. Females, as is really the case with the social web in general, are either twice, and in our case, 3 times as productive in writing on their blog as males, and the females tended to continue to write after the semester. So if it was a course blog, they kept going. This lines up almost perfectly with what Pew tells us about teenage girls in general when it comes to publishing online. Then what we did is we mashed up our blog data with our data warehouse data, and we looked at what does it mean for these various types of people, right? So infrequent users, we looked at GPA. Comment dominant people did a little bit better. But then what we were starting to see, and we didn't get to keep pushing on this, but the people that were writing more, their GPAs were rising because they were writing. And if you've sat around and read some of your students' work, they could use some practice writing. And the magical thing about this is they write well in these public spaces. It's something for us to consider. So what's next? This is what's next. This is what is happening now, the one button web. So there you saw login, publish, blah, blah, blah. Now it's coming down to this, where our students are doing this kind of work. See that little button I have highlighted up in my browser up there? So the one button web that's a connection to actually the web service of Facebook. And I can hit that button, it pops this up, and it grabs content from this page and instantly shares it into Facebook. Okay, so that's the first level of this. So this has been adapted and built into even our web publishing platform, but in even a more powerful sense. So as somebody who's doing research on the web a lot, I can come and I can highlight a piece of text. I can hit my little button there. It pops open my SBU, and I hit publish, and it's instantly, that paragraph is instantly published in my space, so I've curated it. I have my own link back to it so I can find that content again, and it belongs to me. I haven't dumped it into somebody else's repository. I've captured it. And I have it set up so that it sends it off to my Twitter account so that the people that follow me on Twitter see what it is that I find interesting that I'm sharing online. So really what we've built is this notion of consuming, to creating, to managing, to sharing in a single click. That's the behavior. So what looked like this radical behavior 5 or 6 years ago is now becoming practice. So that's the second. The third is the social construction of knowledge. And I love this one because we live at this great university that has these Google Apps for EDU. So when I teach, I typically use Google Suite. Okay, so here's an example. So these folders here are my teams. These folders have permission for myself and my students on them. And inside of those folders are each assignment as a document. And then I say to them, okay, go at it. And they go in there and they start writing, right? So the deal is they read all these scholarly articles, and then as a team they have to write about them, reflect upon them, and then at the end of the week they post a synthesis publicly. So all this is very private work. We've given them a private workspace. So I went in at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, 9:40, 9 a.m., to take this screen capture. And this is what I found. I found not only was I in there, but at the same time there were 3 other students from that team Friday morning at 9 in the morning writing. And this is just a short video of a week worth of writing to get to a single blog post. It scrolls for a minute. And then they post this, what were lousy 3, 4, 5 paragraphs based on an entire week worth of arguing and discourse and conversation and discussion to get to that. And before something like this, we had no way of knowing what each of those individuals was contributing, how they were working together. We would just see this artifact at the end. But with something like this, together in a social sense, they can construct knowledge together that goes far beyond, what did he say? I can forget the facts, but I can't forget the knowledge. Is that what it was? You know, I mean, it's unbelievable. This is the evidence behind the scenes of what is actually going on when groups work together. And then the last one, and this one's just really fun. I just thought I'd put some fun stuff together for you. So user-created content and the move from consumer to creator. We talked about some of this stuff, but this is really where we are and what we're living with. 65% of teens are actively engaged in one type of content creation. Females are far more productive online than men are. And the hope is that continues longitudinally into technology fields and STEM fields. Teens are only twice as likely to have shared video online. That's all that boys do. They have nothing to say about that. Why? When we ask them almost about all the time, someone comments on their work. So again, social conversation. You've heard of YouTube? It's an internet video thing. Most faculty, half of them report using YouTube as a teaching tool. Educause tells us just 2 years ago only a third did that. They're using it in a very streamlined way, basically like a film strip projector or a movie projector. Okay, let's watch this video now. They're not really taking advantage of what it does. Most people that make YouTube videos see that. They make what's called the Hey YouTube What's Up video. Heard of these? So most of the videos on YouTube that are of individual people start with the person saying, hey YouTube, what's up? Because they know they're talking to an entire planet when they do it. And the interesting thing about that is it's this very private space that they do in their dorm rooms and their bedrooms, but they know the second they hit that button that there's a global audience out there. So I wanted to just focus on Remix's conversation. Hello Vader. Max calls it Darth Kitty. I think I like that one better. So I'm going to start with this, okay? So this is Irving Fields. Irving Fields is 82 years old, okay? Actually, his demographic represents a very large demographic on YouTube, believe it or not. It skews very much into that age demographic. So this is called the YouTube.com theme song, and I want you to pay attention to a couple very nuanced things as we start to go through this.
You'll find the whole world for what you're looking for. YouTube.com, it's a blessing for mankind, that's for sure.
You see the wife walking in the background there? See her? She's an important player in this whole thing. Okay, it's great, Irving. Now, Irving doesn't have that many views. He only has about 1 million. But that's not the important thing. When you start to do this, do one thing, watch a video and look at the video replies. It's in the video replies that you start to unlock the conversational nature of YouTube. The text replies are terrible. The video replies are incredible. So I went through and I just started clicking on them, because I have all the time in the world. Chuck does all the work. He knows. So this is the first video reply. This is the first sort of level of remix, okay? This is essentially what is referred to as the shot by shot. See the wife? Right? So that's the shot by shot. That's the shot for shot remake. Okay. And I would argue, and I am arguing with you today, that reply is a form of a conversation that we may not yet quite understand that's going on online, or we're beginning to have a sense. Here's another one. Charlie Bit My Finger. I'm sure none of you have seen this. Who hasn't seen Charlie Bit My Finger? Oh my God, welcome to the internet. This is great. Today's the day. Have we been turning off the internet? It's still... Okay, you have to watch this, okay? Just watch it.
Charlie bit me. petroleum still
Okay, I always like to think what people outside the room are thinking when they hear him scream like that, like what we're doing to people in these conferences. Okay, so check this out, okay? This is old. I didn't pull this down yesterday. Okay, so spend about 8 hours and explore these. There are hundreds, if not thousands, video replies. And they are incredible. They are prequels, what happened right before. They are family reunions where they do it again. There's the Halloween version where he bites the finger off. And these are happening in our classrooms, our dorm rooms, and apartments, and kids, and their conversations. So let's think about this, art imitating life. Here's another one. I don't know if you've seen this. This is the JK wedding entrance. The story behind this is very simple. It was a group of just basically the groom and bridesmaids decided we're going to surprise everybody. We're not going to walk down the aisle in a normal way. Okay? So nobody knew this was going to happen, and this is what it is. All right, okay, so that's great, right? Now, you guys have heard of The Office, the television program The Office, right? Where it's at NBC, where they pay people money. Okay, this was the season finale a couple years ago. See if you can recognize this mashup. They just forgot to tell the bride. So what do we have going on there? We have the internet influencing real life, and real life being real media. It's unbelievable to reach. Here's another one. This one's called Walk It Out. This one really has a long and winding road, so stick with me on this. So this is Gwen Verdon. You guys know Gwen Verdon and Bob Fosse, okay? This is from the late 60s. This is called Mexican Breakfast. I'm sorry, I don't have a high definition version of this, but this is variety television. I could watch this all day. Okay, so this disappears forever. And in about 2007, it just appears out of nowhere. And it leads to this whole internet meme conversation called Walk It Out Fosse. So here's the first one.
Now walk it out, 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 now walk it out. Where's that walk it out? South walk it out, south walk it out, south walk it out, east side walk it out, south walk it out, south walk it out. Now walk it out, 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 now walk it out.
So they're playing with tempo and all that kind of stuff, right? And then here's another one just for fun. This is the Black Eyed Peas. And each one gets increasingly sophisticated in its technical. Say it. I mean, it's just great. Thousands more. I'm telling you, thousands. We'll do it on Monday. We'll sit down, Chuck. We'll go through all of them. So now I want you to look. Now this is now think about this. Okay, so this is in the 60s. Then it disappears for 30 odd years. It comes back, and this remix happens and takes over. And then we end up with this. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this woman. Her name is Beyonce. My daughter had to tell me about her. Okay, watch.
All the single ladies,
Yeah, it's a shot-by-shot remake of the original Walk It Out. And when you do the research on this, you've discovered that Beyonce knows about all of this. She saw the original, then she saw the thousands of remixes online, and she wanted to see if she could make a mainstream remix of an internet meme to generate some sort of new discourse. I don't know if you know, she won a Grammy for that. Thanks, internet. And then there's this, the final one. You ever heard of the show Glee? Okay.
One, two, three, let's hit it!
All right. So think about this for a second. It's unbelievable to me. Okay, so we have the original Bob Fosse, Gwen Verdon thing come in, and it touches this nerve that leads to these Walk It Out remixes that go off in thousands of directions. And all I showed you were basically the shot for shot and playing with tempo. But then it comes up, and Beyonce goes, oh my God, I can make this. And then search for that, and you'll find the hundreds, if not thousands, of ways people have reimagined that and extended and pushed that discussion in a very different direction. All the married ladies, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And then it comes down to the mainstream remixes of Glee. I can't tell you how many videos of high school football teams I've seen where they try to reproduce that scene. It's awful. Don't visit that one at all. But look at this. One event now triggers a never-ending story where people dip in, participate, and come out, all the while engaging in a new form of conversation being spread across the internet. So, my point. I have two of them, actually. The first is this. All these technologies we look at this as being very silly when we first see this. We see this as just folly, but the reality is inside of all of that, there are embedded pedagogies to be discovered and explored, just like with the chalkboard. And it's critical that we take some time, and I'm not saying go out and choose all of them. I'm saying think of one problem that you may have, and then think broadly about how an affordance of one of the platforms that our students and we participate in could help you solve that one issue. And see how that happens, because they are in there. And secondly, and more important, and this is what got me in trouble with the Chronicle, is that this is all in this emerging space of digital expression. And I truly believe that it is a form of scholarship, an emergent form of scholarship, and that it must be systematically supported. And what does that mean? It means days like today. It means re-envisioning labs on our campus. It means new forms of faculty development, new technologies that we have to adopt and drive. And that's what I mean by systematically. So that's what I had to fill up my hour. So thank you. No, all I have is this one.
If you have questions, could you come down here? We'll take this.
Or on Twitter. I'm happy to take it.
Okay. So we can hear you. As we can. I don't need them. Anybody have questions? Please.
So why didn't you use these new platforms today?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't you use one of these new platforms to this audience today?
In what way? I mean,
Well, you stood up there and talked to us.
yeah,
No
because I'm
video,
old. Because I'm old.
Video, no nothing.
I'm old, but I will say this. On the tables, we did try to bring some of this in today, the SBUTLT hashtag. And if you look at that hashtag, believe it or not, there's more than just me tweeting on it. There's actually conversation going on in the back channel, which is really cool.
So if my classroom is all full of 20-year-olds, I can assume they can all use Twitter, but I don't teach the classrooms full of just 20-year-olds.
No, you don't. What do you teach? What kind of classrooms do you teach to?
Okay, so the classes I have range in age from 50 to 23, let's say.
Yeah,
high school.
yeah. And so that Twitter example that I used was not an undergraduate classroom of 20. That was of 20-year-olds. That was a doctoral seminar course. So they were probably a little bit more in that ballpark, 23 to 50. Very, very uncomfortable for them at first. Very uncomfortable for them at first. And just like what Eric said, none of that was graded specifically. Like, we didn't say to them, we are going to count the characters in your tweets, the substance of them. What we said was participation will be looked at in very broad terms. But what we want to open up to you is another avenue for you to work either with me or together as a team. And that's really what emerged from that. So again, this isn't prescriptive as much as just, we didn't know that was going to happen, frankly. We thought, let's see what happens if we engage them in something, because they all wanted to have their laptops. And when you'd walk around to the back, you could tell that some of them were not really doing anything. And it did pull them in. So I guess what I would say to that is start slow. And if there's a problem you're trying to solve, the problem we were trying to solve, there were two of them. One, we had about a third of the class were English as second language students. And they were very nervous about raising their hand and participating in conversation. That was one of the challenges. The other challenges that we had is we had a broad range. Being a seminar course, we had some students that were literally right at the end of their doctoral work, and we had some right at the beginning. And they were the ones at the beginning were very hesitant to raise their hands. And what Twitter did is it opened up another channel for them to do this. So one of the categories of tweets I mentioned was this idea of the encouragement tweet. Usually what would happen is someone would say, I don't understand this. And what would emerge would be 3 or 4 or 5 other ones that would say, I don't either. Somebody asked that as a question. And someone would naturally raise their hand. So we found sort of models around some of those things. But no, we didn't require, and I wouldn't say go in your classroom and require it. I have seen other faculty do this in classrooms, is they talk for 15 minutes, and then they go to the Twitter stream for 5, and they pull down those questions. So there are strategies that you can do, and that's what I mean by the embedded approaches. So I don't know if that helps at all. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit more about how to use Instagram in the classroom?
So that's one that I'm just, like, that was in that front category of, here's an emergent platform that we're trying to figure out. So I know how, I've read a couple of pieces about this, and so virtual sort of discovery tours, right? So I'm walking and say I'm in a history course, and so I'm in New York City this weekend, and I take pictures of things, and I use my Instagram to do, and I drop a hashtag on it for my course, and then that gets aggregated back into the course site for the other students to be able to see that. So it's a lot like Twitter in that it's real quick burst, but it's visual, so you can see real evidence. I've also seen in K-12, people take out with their phones and take pictures of specimen and things like that on the ground, and then tag them and identify them and things of that nature.
And can I just, because I'm interested in this, because I just did research on voting patterns of Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, and one of the things that we found in interviewing the population across the board was that the major way to motivate populations across the United States was through Instagram.
Yeah, see,
And these are
it's amazing, isn't it?
These are not just 20-year-olds. These are 50-year-olds, and it's a way to get to the older generation as well. So that's why I was interested.
No, it is, and so what you're going to find is what will drive youth and teen and our students out of Instagram is your research will teach the advertising companies how to use that platform for that evil, because they see that as evil, and then they'll flock to the next thing, right? And then that will be the next influencer. Because that's why they report leaving Facebook now. It's becoming filled with ads driven by the mining of our data. That's really interesting. And it's a visual platform, right? Yeah. Sure.
Great presentation,
Oh,
first of all.
thanks.
But I'm really curious to get your bent on the following. In the workforce, the U.S. workforce, there are now, for the first time in history, 4 generations in the workforce at once.
Yeah.
So in the workforce, there is a real communication crisis that's going on now around the world. And my question to you is, how do we teach our students? Our responsibility, right, is to prepare them for the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we teach human-to-human communication skills so that they will succeed and prosper
Mhm.
in this new multi-generational work.
I can only react to that if you tweet it to me. So I don't know about you and your classrooms and things. I can only speak for myself. My classroom is dominated by face-to-face, 3-hour at a block discourse. It's full on this. I don't think any of us are running away from that per se. I think that we use 4 generations, right? We see it even here on our own campus with our own staff and our own faculty, right? We have faculty and staff at different points, and there's not a comfort level with each of these modes of communication, but the future is going that one direction, and it's going towards a mashup of face-to-face and mediated, computer-mediated, more and more mobile. So I would say I wouldn't have too much fear in the disappearance of face-to-face communication. I think that what's going on in many ways online that we don't really recognize, or we don't recognize as real communication, is just the same way we talk. Like if we listen, I listened to all this, right? I listened to, what are you up to? What have you been working on? Where'd you go for dinner last night? How you doing? Then if you read that from a teenager in Facebook, that thread, for some reason, we apply this weird voice to it. What's up? Nothing. What have you been doing? Nothing. How you doing? Good. What'd you have for lunch? No. You know? It's the same conversation we're having here. It's the same exact thing. It's just mediated and it's been moved into a different space. I do think that the basis of what we do at this university and most universities, 95, if not 99% of it happens in a classroom. So when I said don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that's what I mean. Those practices still exist and they still work. But the future-facing practices that need to occur is how do they communicate when there's an audience openly online, and how do they communicate and understand the affordances of the networks that we're asking them to participate in. Here we're launching an enterprise social network. That's a whole different kind of communication internal to the university than what we're used to, and we have to learn how to do that. So I think I have time for one more, is that right? Okay. Oh God, your hand is up really high. Sorry. Go ahead.
So how do you deal with an immense amount of data that all these digital media produce?
I don't sleep now. It's like anything else. You become accustomed to the various tools and technologies to make your life better. So people say, I'll take one example. People say, I'm too busy for Twitter because I don't want to read about what my friend had for breakfast. You're following the wrong person if that's what you're using Twitter for, right? So even though there's all of this happening, I'm not actively participating in all these areas. These are my areas of research, and I've collected these stories over a number of years. So I don't stay connected to all of these mediums at the same time. It's impossible. There's too much data coming at you. And then I'll add to that is more and more of this content is being aggregated and made sense for us by, guess what? The other people in the room who are now the filters and the recommendation engine for us. So when you're connected to a network on Facebook, you have a tendency to read the things from the people that you spend more time reading and commenting with, right? So and then they do that as well. So you build not just a network of people you share with, but you start to build a trusted network. And I think that over time will become more and more with that and the technological algorithms that'll make sense of it for us. So we can talk.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.